not producing cortisol. Well, you see, this is the thing. Cortisol, again, we know is a hormone, and now we know anytime we hear the word hormone, we're hearing instructions. Anytime you hear the word hormone, say, what is my body being told to do? Like I said, case in point, serotonin, be happy. And this is going to be very important to another point that I'm going to make. Insulin, that tells me the hormone is saying open up the cell wall so blood sugar can come inside so the cells can metabolize. So cortisol is very interesting. Is the celebration in the medical community about cortisol is a farce. And I know it's difficult a lot of times when people are building about these things that don't have credentials. So to digress, before I go into the cortisol, let's just remember this is the same people that created a rite aid, right, which is spelled R-I-T-E, which means ritual. Not R-I-G-H-T as in correct. It's spelled R-I-T-E as in ritual. And they solicit pharmaceuticals. And pharmacy in Greek is pharmakeia. And anytime you see it in the Bible is when they talk about sorcery or witchcraft, because that's what pharmacy means etymologically. So we have the rite aid, the ritual aid. They aid us in the ritual to facilitate sorcery or witchcraft by way of medicine. So I say all that to say, because these are the people that we have entrusted when they take the Hippocratic Oath, which sounds like hypocrite, right? But these are the people that we entrust with the information, so when the homie come through, because I'm not credentialed, I dropped out of school 10th grade, normally we get a bit apprehensive. We like, yo, we need to see some credentials on the wall to listen to you, right? But these are people that specialize in hospitality, as in hospital, because that's what a hospital is. They're being hospitable because they give you a nice bed and they give you a TV. They're in the business of treatment. They're not in the business of cure. We want to keep this in mind. So when we're talking about cortisol, it can't be that good for us. Cortisol can be likened to that of an adaptive disorder in a sense, like sickle cell anemia. And I like going through analogies. You have a question? Okay. I like.
For the cameras?
Okay.
No, they're not coming. Cool. It's okay, we're good.
All right.
Unless she just said something.
No.
Oh, okay.
I was just going by
Yeah, no.
Okay.
We're good, because they're not coming.
Nah, not a problem, not a problem.
Good, thank you.
I like using analogies because we can make the connections, right? So when we think about diabetes, because I'm definitely in tune with the cortisol conversation, it's just we don't cover enough ground in our community with these type of conversations. So I do my best to say as many things as possible. You know what I'm saying? So when we look at sickle cell anemia, right, that's an adaptive disorder. I want us to keep that in mind when we think about what cortisol is doing. Cortisol is good, but it's per circumstance. That's not so good. So one more analogy I would make before I even initiate that one, I would like to say it like this. My father left me when I was 8 years old, on my birthday. My mom died the week I met her from cancer. When I turned 17, I had 7 days with her. I finally met my mother. She died 7 days from that time. Look what I do today, right? So this is the cortisol effect. What I'm saying is, should I simulate the same experience so my children could come out the same way? Should I make sure I leave my child on her 8th birthday, and should her mama die in order to make sure we produce a child that'll write 90+ books like myself, speak 8 languages and all this other stuff? No, of course not. This is why cortisol is being revered in this way. There are stark circumstances that the body is subject to, which is why cortisol comes in the first place. So yes, thank you, cortisol, for what you do. But if we could avoid the child being abandoned at 8 years old, let's go for that route. You know what I'm saying? So sickle cell anemia, as another example, is an adaptive disorder. See? So just like I said, when we're talking about diabetes, we should call it a hormonal disorder, so we know what's going on. We know hormones are instructions, and we know what's the instruction that we're missing, per insulin. So sickle cell anemia, instead of calling it a disease, it's a disease to the Caucasian world of medicine. It is not a disease to the black man or the black woman. It is the cure. Why? This is a fact. When we were taken out of our climatic conditions and subject to the cold, first of all, we don't catch hots, we catch colds. Never heard someone say, I just caught a hot. We catch colds. You feel what I'm saying? You walk with me? So when we came over here, we were subject to parasites that we never were subject to. One, namely, malaria. Okay? Malaria. And once we got subject to this malaria, what happened was Native Americans on the Spaniard side of things, European Spaniard, not Nubian Spaniard, right? On the Spaniard side of things, they was dropping off. Caucasians was dropping off. Black people was dropping, and then it was coming back up. They started calling us zombies. They was like, yo, what the fuck? I thought, because the people that was still alive watching this shit was like, yo, black people are going down, they be coming back up. Why is that happening? Well, what happens is, what our body did in defense to malaria was create a cure. And the cure was what we now can identify as an adaptive disorder. The body said, you know, we're gonna deprive the parasite, malaria, of the oxygen that is thriving off of per our red blood cells. So what we're gonna do, the body said we're gonna lower the oxygen to the point it may almost kill the human, the Nubian. It'll kill the parasite, and then we'd be able to resuscitate the Nubian. So what happened is the cells became crescent in shape because of the deprivation of oxygen to deny the parasites of existence in the body. And thus the shape has been identified as sickle. You walking with me? And so the body cured us. So instead, you know, to Caucasians it's a disease because they didn't get sickle cell. They died. For us, it was the cure. So we adapted to the disorder. You feel me? So now when we go into cortisol, we look at that, and that happened. That's your body's fight or flight. We don't want cortisol. Why we don't want cortisol? Because if a man, cortisol levels go up because he's stressed, his testosterone levels go down simultaneously. We don't want that. You know, you walking with me? Because the testosterone is a hormone that gives us instructions to be men. That's just a fact. And a sidebar to that, which is very interesting, about 20 years ago, you would have had to go to hormonal therapy if your testosterone level was less than 500 ng over DL. Today, the national standard for you to be afraid about your low testosterone level is 250, which is closer to the amount of testosterone that a woman needs. You see what's going on here? You feel what I'm saying? We needed 500 ng over DL to establish ourselves scientifically and mathematically sound as men. This is the thing that gives us the deep voice. And we look at boxing, many of us don't even know, boxers used to go 100 rounds. Yeah. They used to go 100 rounds like nothing. Yeah. Our grandfathers, their brief was a lot wider, their feet were a lot bigger and wider. Like, we were big. And so, mathematically, not socially, my father was more a man than me, and his father was more a man than him. Mathematically. Socially, the nigga left me. You know what I'm saying? Mathematically, he was more a man than I, and he was less a man than his father. Because there's a decline, and it's on purpose. And one of the things that's being used is the stress level. The cortisol makes the testosterone decline. But to answer the question now, after we covered all that, cortisol is good. It's an instruction that may, like if a rape victim has to recollect what transpired, cortisol makes you forget if you're too overwhelmed. And it does that to protect you. You know, it's protecting you. It's a fight or flight response. Okay, we're here to soothe your anxiety, but if this should persist and we don't find a better means to diffuse the potentiality of this negative advent or circumstance, then the thing that's helping you is not going to be that good. You walk with me. So if I take antibiotics, it not only wipes out bad bacteria, it wipes out good bacteria. Then what I got to do is replace the the good bacteria. And now this is an interesting part, and this is why I always say the therapist is just that. If you say therapist very slow, what do you see? The rapist. The therapist is the rapist. It's literally spelled the rapist right in front of our eyes. When you look at the word therapist, you literally see the rapist. And I'm going to explain why the therapist is the rapist. And it goes back to the Rite Aid, ritual, pharmacy, pharmakeia, sorcery. It goes back to all of that. Because now, after the ritual from the Rite Aid pharmacy, and the pharmacy being the sorcery or the witchcraft that's being administered by way of the ritual aid, the rapist comes right in. Because the rapist is able to make sure you get the pharmaceuticals.
I'm not the rapist.
Therapist.
Oh,
You know, so the rapist comes in. So now we got Rite Aid. It's not spelled R-I-G-H-T, as in the correct thing. It's a ritual aid. They're aiding us in a ritual. And now we know pharmacy, as in the Bible, whenever we see the word sorcery or witchcraft, we know it's the word pharmacy because it's the Greek word pharmakeia. So now we understand, okay, so when we give our children these pharmaceuticals, because they say they're ADD and ADHD, they wind up looking like they're entranced under a damn spell. They never be the same again. Now we understand that. But who's setting us up? Well, the rapist is setting us up, or therapist, and I'm going to tell you why. If I take an antibiotic right now, it's going to wipe out good and bad bacteria. Alkalinity was a very important conversation, but so are probiotics and prebiotics. Okay? About 3 to 5 pounds of your weight is bacteria. Facts. 40 trillion. There are 40 trillion bacteria in your body. They outnumber your cells 10 to 1. So this means 90% of you is not you, it's bacteria. The other 10% would be what you would identify as yourself, because those are your cells. You walking with me?
yeah.
And then we can discuss that, and what that 10% really is could break you down to about 3%, right? Or 5% technically. But we're gonna do the 90% of what you accredit yourself as being is bacteria. There's always a civil war every day between good and bad bacteria. You have what's called, now that we know hormones are instructions, the endocrine system, which we don't talk about enough, is the system that regulates hormones. It's the system that regulates instructions. What instructions? If I am, for some reason, I need to know how to ride a bike. How do you explain balance to someone? You're like, I just learned how to ride it. After a while, I just kept doing it, and eventually it worked. That's what we say. But technically, what happened was, you have to go to sleep so your central nervous system, or rest so your central nervous system could collect data, and then say, okay, this is what's needed. Because we just studied the algorithms and the mechanics of this person based on the DNA and everything. We know, for whatever reason, he or she says they need this is what we're gonna do. So it's something called proprioceptors. When you go on a treadmill, this is the best way to explain it. You go on a treadmill, you're running, right? The second you get off the treadmill, what happens? You get a little dizzy, right? Why? Because the landscape wasn't changing. There was no change of trees, no cars going to and fro, no people going to and fro. Your body said, oh, we could coast. Turn most of these muscles off because this shit is fake. So your body turns your glute muscles off and a bunch of other muscles, and you're only overcompensating for the muscles you need to do the same thing. Now, when you get off, the real world comes back, and the proprioceptors, which are cells that detect balance so they can relay the information to the central nervous system so you can deal with the real spontaneous events. So when you get off the treadmill, it's like, oh shit, we need muscles we don't be using when we're on the treadmill. Turn them back on, quick, before he falls. If you're outside and you're running, at any point there could be a hill, could be a decline, could be an incline, could be a rock. You might have to stop, car coming. You see trees, you see people, you might have to run out the way of another. So now all the muscles have to work. So that's why running outside better than treadmill. Because your body turns off what you don't need. It's proprioceptors.
It's kind of like what I think all the time about, like, you know, like if this was daytime, why not just go outside and do this instead of in here we're using AC, artificial lights.
Fact.
It's all bad.
I agree.
Makes no sense.
It doesn't biologically embed.
Yeah, I think we should start doing the podcast outside with sunlight and fresh air. No AC and no artificial light.
I agree.
I'm on this thing. So real quick, because I want to get your opinion on.
Let me close out on the endocrine system.
Come on.
And so what happens
On the
is
what?
the endocrine system. That's
Got
the
it.
part of the body that regulates hormones.
Okay.
The reason why I brought the proprioceptors is because every day you deal with adversity, every day of different forms. People just walking, you might be training to be a boxer. So your body has to understand your adversity to collect enough data to make you more proficient at the response to that adversity on a day-to-day basis. You might have to deal with verbal abuse day to day, right? You might be very happy. That shit takes instructions too to be happy, serotonin. right? It's to laugh is to still have to utilize chemicals in your body. And that's why some people most people who are comedians normally are depressed in the background.
Right.
Because they run out and they don't know they don't understand. You have to re-invite the chemicals or the nutrients that's necessary to sustain the happiness. Because just being happy can have you drained, because you can laugh so much, you almost get exhausted. And then guess
it's
what?
like the Joker.
Something doesn't go the way you want, and boom, you don't have enough happy esteem or nutrients, ashwagandha and different herbs like that, coppadula, cheney root. These are things that reinforce it, because you actually, the same way you get angry and you could deplete nutrients from your body, being happy, the same thing happens. So you have to rebalance. To maintain happiness can happen, but you got to know what to eat to maintain it. Otherwise, you be on E after a great day of laughter, and now somebody do something, it ain't even that deep, and you just be pissed. You go 0 to 100, and you be like, yo, what the fuck's wrong with you? You was just happy yesterday. Yeah. And so, because we don't know, we got to replace it. It takes time to build it back up. Even if a person was using Molly every damn day, right? Eventually, you run out of happiness. That shit won't make you happy or sexual. After a while, you just have a headache. Because your body is like, yo, we got to replenish the thing that you're accessing every time to be happy. Right? So with the enteroendocrine cells, these are cells that exist in the synapse that connect the brain to the stomach and also to the heart. So or should I say to the gut. So the gut is a form of brain. The gut is made up of 500 million neurons. Neurons is what makes the brain, right? But what we need to understand is a person can go brain dead and still be alive, but they can't go heart dead and still be alive, right? You go heart dead, you're done. You go brain dead, you're still alive. Jellyfish has no brains. They're still moving around, right? So the heart is made up of 40,000 neurons. Cortisol is produced in the heart. It's a fact. The hormone that deals with stress is produced in the heart. The heart produces those hormones, those instructions for stress. Right? So the reason I'm talking about this, the vagus nervous system connects the heart to the brain and the brain to the stomach, and the stomach and the heart are both brains by themselves. And in fact, the brain is actually the interpreter. The brain interprets the messages to relay to the rest of the body how to move in one accord with the gut and with the heart. The brain gets entirely too much credit. That's a fact. It's the heart and the gut that's making instructions. Why is this important? Because we're going to go to the rapist. Remember I was talking about the therapist, the rapist. I never forget my point. So now, where's happiness come from? Where does serotonin come from? The instruction to be happy, to be content, to feel fulfilled. Where does that come from? 95% of happiness comes from the gut. 5% of it comes from up here in the brain. It's made in the gut. The good and the bad bacteria relay messages because it exists in what they call a synapse, which means the happiness that's created in the gut in the form of serotonin is connected by way of cells from the endocrine, from the gut to the brain, enteroendocrine cells. What does this mean? Your happiness is precipitated by bad bacteria or good bacteria eating the food that it likes. It has very little to do with it. And by good and bad bacteria, it doesn't mean they're for or against you. It's just the way it exists helps us out. And the way the other one exists doesn't help us out. Like, we're on planet Earth. Sometimes we do shit that advertently or inadvertently is good for the Earth. Doesn't mean that we actually give a damn about Earth. Sometimes we just do shit that's good for Earth. And it's not even intentionally doing it. And other times we do shit that's bad, not intentionally. So we're good and bad for the Earth, but not based on incentive. Same thing with the good and bad bacteria. Nobody's on the agenda to keep the body alive. The good and bad bacteria make up you more than who you call yourself or establish as you. So here's the issue with the therapist or the rapist. If you're low on vitamin D, what's the number one symptom of vitamin D deficiency? Depression, anxiety, in acute form, suicide. We'll move there. If you're vitamin B12 deficient, what are the symptoms? Depression, anxiety, lack of focus, suicide. Okay, if you're deficient in vitamin D3, which is really what it is, depression, anxiety, like suicide, or suicide. Why is this all important? If I'm not eating the food or getting the sunlight that produces the vitamin D3, if I'm not eating the food, 90% of Americans are vitamin D deficient. Let me say that. 9 out of every 10 people are not getting what's responsible when deficient at it, the necessary things they need to be happy and fulfilled, right? So why I say this is, if I'm not eating something that when I don't eat it, it makes me depressed or sad or lack of focus or have a problem remembering or even suicidal, then why are you talking to me? How can you talk me out of something that was precipitated not from talking, but from a lack of eating? So, if I feel like killing myself, and I realize one of the symptoms for wanting to kill myself is being vitamin D deficient and vitamin B12 deficient at the same time, then maybe the therapy should come after we reinstitute or reinvite the nutrients or the right dietary regimen. Now, what I'm gonna talk about? Damn, I'm mad that I was treating y'all this way. I feel bad that I was hurting y'all when I was sad and I was depressed, and y'all was worried about me. That's when the conversation comes in. We don't have the conversation, and then from your read of the conversation, you come up with what drugs I should use? Hold on. So you mean to tell me all these children with ADD and ADHD, because those are also the same symptoms. See, anxiety, depression, suicide, attention deficit disorder, dissociative identity disorder. You know, they all share the same shit. And guess who else shares it? People that's vitamin D deficient, people that's B12 deficient. They all share the symptoms. And that's why you can't get a cotton swab and find out if somebody has ADD or ADHD, because it's subjective. It's opinionated. You need somebody to have an opinion and say, oh yeah, you're suffering from that. It's not like chicken pox, where that nigga got chicken pox, don't scratch him, don't touch him. You see, that's a different conversation. You can't do that with ADD or ADHD. Those are subjective diseases. So watch this. Why are you trying to talk to me and find out what I need if the symptoms already tell you what I'm lacking in? So when you come up with your idea, oh, I talked to him. He's suicidal. We need to give him some Risperdal. He might grow some titties in the Advent. I'm taking it.
This is what they try to give me.
You feel me?
They tried to give me Risperdal.
Why are you talking? You can't talk.
Thank God I didn't take it.
You know what that's like too? My car break down, and I'm gonna send my car to a therapist in hopes the car start working right. You see, like if your transmission fluid is messed up, sometimes that shit go backwards when you're trying to drive forward, right? You could talk to the car all you want. You could give it a car wash. You could vacuum that bitch. The shit ain't gonna stop going backwards till you change the transmission fluid or you get a new transmission. You feel me?
Sure.
So the human being needs a new transmission or new transmission fluid, and people like, no, talk to them and evaluate them, and then give them some of this shit over here.
Come on, let's make some noise one more
That's
time,
crazy.
bro. Let's make some noise for Brother Polight, bro. This is amazing.
They raping you. It's the real rapist.
I agree.
That's the rapist. You know what I'm saying? And we need to change that whole concept. Don't talk to me until I get better.
Yeah.
Don't talk to me before I'm better. And now this whole shit gonna have me fucked up.
Yeah.
Because you're not even gonna promise me a better good. My daughter was suffering from so-called ADD and ADHD symptoms, right? So-called. And I was like, wow. And everybody says my daughter, Mad, is brilliant. Mm-hmm. And anybody that listens to her teach,
absolutely,
at her age, she's brilliant. She was speaking 4 languages at 4 years old. So what I said, yo, I looked at it and I realized, oh shit, I got a volume test to check the bacteria in her body, because that's your fingerprint. Everybody's is different, the amount of different types of bacteria that you need. And certain bacteria make you more aggressive. Some bacteria make you less aggressive, more competitive. These are facts. They got all sorts of tests where they take the fecal matter, the feces of one animal, and put it in another animal, and then those species become competitive like the previous animal. And then they take that out, they take the passive species fecal matter and put that into the aggressive species, and then they become passive. So what we also find out, and that's why they have fecal matter transplants, which sounds horrible, taking other people's shit and putting it in your body. If you get to a point that you've been lacking in the right bacteria for too long, you get a fecal matter transplant. Yeah, you're using someone else's feces. And all of a sudden you're revived and you're happy all over again. Now there's another way around it, which is to consume foods that have the right bacteria that you need, called probiotics, and then you have to be able to feed them properly, called prebiotics. So we talk about alkaline and acidity, but we don't talk about probiotics and prebiotics. And so you get a volume test. A volume test will tell you about the ratio of bacteria you have in your body. and what foods you can use to feed them specifically, because at the end of the day, the only reason you're eating is because they gotta eat. It has nothing to do with you. Very little of it has any, and the signals you get when you eat and oh, this feels good, is because they're sending the message to your brain, because when your body doesn't discriminate. When your body eats bread, sugar, pasta, you do crack, you do cocaine, the brain interprets it all as the same thing.
Yeah.
The brain doesn't discriminate. All this shit is
Crack.
drugs.
Wait. Time out.
Facts.
Wait. Time out.
Facts.
Pasta and cocaine are the same.
It's the same thing, different volume. And if you study American history,
I thought I was drug free this whole time.
no.
I'm a full-fledged cokehead head.
Facts. Most people are. We don't eat nothing unless it's rice or pasta. So what we gotta understand is, if you go into American history, you gotta look it up. They was talking about making refined sugar against the law. Now it's in everything. You know why? Because Congress established that it's a drug. Refined sugar, processed sugar. It's a drug. Go in American history, you're gonna see they was debating, nah, we can't sell this shit to the people. This crazy. Everybody's gonna be fucking high. They talked in a context because they knew sugar is drugs. This generation, it sounds weird. When this shit was first getting started, they're like, we can't be selling this shit to the people. That sugar was crack.
But so
And it still is.
so I'm an idiot. So when I ask these questions, so what does that have to do with pasta though? That's sugar?
Because it's still a carbohydrate.
Oh, it breaks down to sugar.
And it's not a resistant starch, which is what the prebiotic food is for the probiotic or good bacteria.
I understand. Yeah.
So, so the problem with that is, it's all crack, right?
Right.
And so now our diet is like, if you look at a 12 Sun bag of crack, the body is like, okay, after 2 months of this rice, you know, we could qualify this nigga as a cokehead too, technically. White rice, because black rice and wild rice is not even rice, it's really grass. They just call it rice. Rice ain't no good. It produces mucus, and then it causes the cells to cluster, and that's an abnormal growth of cells in a particular area, and that's called the tumor, and then it becomes malignant because now it's deadly. So that's how that thing works. So that shit is just all drugs. So if you get drug-free and you stop fucking with pasta unless it's made up of amaranth, kamut.
What about, so even white rice from Erewhon, bad?
White rice is drugs, bro.
From Erewhon, bad.
It don't matter who's selling the bags of drugs. You know what I'm saying? You got that white lady in the bag, you calling it rice, he calling it crack, he calling it coke. It's the same shit.
Wow. All right, real quick, before the cameras die, I do want to.
Yeah, so I don't let a nigga doing lines deceive me while the nigga next to me in a bowl of white rice.
Right. I mean, that's, I hear that. I hear that.
Facts.
So real quick, I want to ask you about, because I kind of wanted to stunt and play something real quick and review it and get your take on it.
Yeah.
But more importantly, I wanted to first ask your opinion on, like, what do you feel about astral projection?
I think it's legitimate.
Legitimate. So, like, what do you feel about, like, meditation, just period?
Very important.
Very important.
It's a non-inoculated clause to get back your sanity. You know, when we talk about mental health, it's like that's another interesting thing, and this keeps me calm. It's always about perspective. Perspective will save your life and save others. Keep you sane so your cortisol levels don't go up. Why? Because if a person has cancer or diabetes, would you drape them up and like, bitch, how the fuck you get cancer? You know, you would never do that, right? Because we know cancer is a disease, right? And we know diabetes is a disease. So I'm gonna whip this motherfucker's ass. He got diabetes. I told this nigga about diabetes, right? We ain't gonna do that. But adults suffer from mental health issues. And if you are not able to realize that this motherfucker is mentally sick, you actually won't put hands on them. But what if you realize they had diabetes of the mind or cancer of the mind? You wouldn't want to put hands on them. In fact, you would empathize with them. You say, sis lost her damn mind. Can't take her serious.
Wow.
She has cancer of the mind. And now, when anyone has a disease, there's different genres of response, right? Or categories. There's treatment, but the person who has it has to acknowledge the fact that they have it in the first place to get treated. So that might be obsolete. Then there's also the cure, right? Sometimes it might be a cure for it, but still that would allude to the fact that person has to be compliant with getting the necessary treatment for the cure. Then there's this is contagious. So some people are so mentally ill, they have everybody in here cursing and pissed off with them. Because it's contagious. And in those people, you just got to quarantine the room. Like, yo, we just don't want people with your mentality here. Because no matter how strong we are mentally, for some reason, that shit contagious when you get up in here. I'm good with his attitude, her attitude, but when you come, that's my breaking point. I can't do it. Yeah. We got to quarantine the room. We got to see if there's any niggas in the room. We don't want no niggas here. We only want brothers, African Americans, sand niggas. You know what I'm saying? We don't want, but anyone but you. So we got to look at mental health the same way, because then we won't struggle with people the same way, and we won't be so angry. And that's why meditation is so good.
I want to pull up this clip because I want to also cross promote this this thing that we did. So I want to see if we can cut this in the edit. But I just want to play it and then see if you can.
I know how your mind works.
Yeah, make a beautiful ending to this.
Yeah, do your thing.